Hello friends, a very warm welcome to Unsarkari. And in this session number 7 of environmental series, we will be talking about ecological session. Again, this goes without saying that in the previous 6 lessons, we have tried to create a kind of a successive but complex level understanding of all the concepts related with environment, beginning with the term environment itself, going with ecology, and further on with the population, along with biotic and abiotic factors and so on. So what is the goal? Again, the goal is to make you understand the concepts at a fundamental level. That is why this is very important series which will help you to create a very fine level of clarity of different concepts which are going to come in the prelims examination. Indirectly, this is going to help you write both geography and also environment and disaster management related questions. Once you understand the whole concept, it becomes much more easier to use our newspaper analysis sessions. Also, it becomes easier to write the mains answers also. And on the top of it, your vocabulary will also improve. So here you go, starting with the goal and zeal of getting success in the prelims examination. When stripped of its original vegetation by fire, flood or glaciation, which we agree this happens in tundra, this happens in Rajasthan, this happens in Uttarakhand, this happens in parts of interiors of Telangana and so on. An area of bare ground does not remain void of plants and animals, we agree with that. So beginning with plants, area is rapidly colonized by variety of both plants and animal species that we have seen in case of Western Ghats, that we have seen in case of even just go and Google what happened in Wayanad post landslide time period and just see what keeps on happening when for the 6 months you have the routes closed when the heavy snowfall is there in the upper Himalayas, that is Himadri region. So when there is a rapid colonization, there is a subsequent modification of one or more environment factors. I hope you will agree with this. And the modification of environment may be allowing additional species and they are becoming established. Now this transition series of communities which develop in a given area is called sere or ser or seral stages. While the final or stable or mature community, that is called climax. That means it is reaching the peak. So the development of the community by the action of vegetation on environment. Okay, please remember vegetation on environment, action of vegetation on environment leading to the establishment of new species is termed as succession. So how we can conclude? Succession is the universal process of directional change. In vegetation during ecological time, it can be recognized by progressive change in species composition of the community. Even retrogression in community development does not occur unless succession is disturbed or halted by fire, grazing, scrapping or erosion. So here we go. We have understood it clearly that until unless anthropogenic factors or other factors are there, there is not going to be stopping or change in the ecological succession. Some factor must work. So the process of directional change in vegetation is termed as succession. So you have pioneer species, then you have intermediate species, and finally you have climax species. We have number of examples. Please do look for agroclimatic zones in India and also do look for forest classification of forests and then look for species and you will understand that how we can really relate this. But what are the causes of succession? Let's understand that. Succession involves a series of complex processes. There exist many causes and there have been three primary causes of succession according to ecologists. Initial or initiating causes, they can be climatic, that means abiotic plus biotic. They can be climatic as well as abiotic, and both biotic factors can be there. Climatic factors, just close your eyes and try to recall what you have discussed previously: erosion, deposits, wind, fire, temperature, and so on, which are caused by lightning or volcanic activity in one way. The biotic may be, all kind of from respiration to other kind of activities will be coming under biotic activities. So they will be the causes to produce the bare areas or destroy the existing populations. This is the initiating cause. Now, when we see the continuing causes, the processes are migration. We have discussed migration and excess, aggression, competition, and reaction, which cause successive waves of population as a result of changes. Now, this is happening chiefly in the edaphic, that is soil features of the area, because it is continuing. And finally, stabilizing causes, these include factors such as climate, which will resulting into the stabilization of the community. So initiating, continuing, and stabilizing, there are three types of succession when we speak about the types. When we speak about, not types, I should say causes. But let's see, when we try to see from a different perspective, the trends of changes in ecosystem development from young to mature stages. This is another way to understand the same thing. Let's see succession in terms of functional changes. So continuous change, for example, in plants and animals, it is occurring all the times, and increase in the diversity of species is taking place. That is why UPSC prelims is asking you questions that certain kind of species of plants, it has been more in number, and then it obviously it may be an invasive species, as we have discussed in our previous lecture, but here we are seeing in terms of increase. The general appearance of the community or physiognomy keeps on becoming more and more complex. I agree with that. And there is a progressive increase in the amount of living biomass and the dead organic matter, because you are putting more intensity, you are putting more number, and that is why biomass is also increasing. And this biomass growth, whether it is in terms of gross as well as net primary production in the initial and serial stages, it is going to make a difference. So more biomass accumulation, huge biomass structure is there in the climax stage. Green pigment or the chlorophyll, it goes on increasing from the early phase, that means the primary succession. The ratio of the yellow green pigments remains around 2 in the early stages to 3 to 5 in the climax stage, and pigment diversity also increases. So what we have to see is that the change is there when we speak about ecological succession. From the functional perspective, it is continuous also, it is bringing more diversity also, it is progressive in nature also, and even chlorophyll also increases. Let's see one more little complex concept, but not so complex when we try to understand. The community respiration also increases, but the P upon R ratio, that is production upon respiration ratio, remains more than 1 in the serial stages. That means production is more than respiration. The huge living biomass respires a lot in the climax stage, that is the top stage, and the P and R ratio equals, that means production and the respiration ratio becomes equals. Thus in the early stages P is more than R, and in the climax stage P is equal to R. Food chain relationships also become complex, that we also agree, and nutrients in the young stages are allocated mostly in soil, but as the cereal stages advance, nutrients get more allocated in the vegetation and less in soil. And further, the nutrient cycling becomes more close or intrabiotic. That means efficient cycling mechanisms comes into picture, whereas in the early stage, nutrients easily leak out from the system because it is in the formation stage, or you can say because the cycling is in the open type. So what we can see is that when the formation is taking place or when the complexity is increasing, then the system is becoming more compact. It is like the UPSC examination only. The prelims exam is very open-ended. There is no as such specifics of the syllabus defined, but when we see in the mains examination, even the syllabus is very much defined. The role of detritus becomes progressively more and more, and the quality of habitat gets progressively modified, that is from more mesic, that is moderate or well balanced supply of water within, that is what is the term mesic means, and the conditions will be, you can say, more moderate from either too wet or too dry condition in the early stage. Secondly, niche specialization is also increasing. Different functions are more effectively performed. You can say about the evolution of species also, like vertebrates we speak about. So the specialist species in the mature serial stage, where in the early stage, many functions are performed, but the less efficiency is seen in the species. So the life cycle of mature community becoming is more longer and more complex. Importance of micro environment. Okay, micro environment becomes more and the macro becomes less important. Relationship among component species become more and more mutualistic and helpful, even though there exists competition and allochemic activities. That means the certain kind of chemicals which are released by the organisms in order to protect themselves, in order to attract something, in order to survive, in order to adapt. That is what is called allochemic activities to prevent invasions of outside elements. Dispersal of seeds and propagules is by wind in the young stage, whereby animals in the mature stage. So when you are seeing ecological succession, then we are seeing definitely there is a whole scientific methodology behind it. What are the basic types? So in primary succession, if in area there is a kind of a basic environment such as terrestrial, freshwater or marine. It is colonized by organisms for the first time. The succession is called primary succession. So it begins on a sterile area, the area that is not occupied previously by any community, and such as newly exposed rock or a sand dune, where the conditions of existence may not be favorable initially. That means adaptation and the changes will be taking place sooner. So here we see bare rock, lichens, small annual plants and lichens, grasses and perennials, grasses, shrubs and shade intolerant trees and such as pines, and then shade tolerant such as oaks and hickory. So you see there is a whole methodology, there is a whole sequence which is there when we speak about understanding primary succession. In secondary succession, the area is under colonization already. Whatever might be the reason, burning, grazing, clearing, felling of forests, sudden change in the climatic factors and so forth of the previous plants. And then there is another kind of succession which is called secondary succession. The rate of secondary succession is faster than that of primary succession. If the two options are given to you that there is going to be uh, there is going to be a beginning of vegetation in a primary area, or for the first time it is going to take more time, whereas if it is already been there but it is being denuded, it is being wiped off because of grazing, burning, clearing and so forth, it may be leading to a secondary succession. It will be faster when we compare with the primary ones. So the plowed fields, rageweed, crabgrass, ragweed, blackberry, Virginia pine, and oak history climax forest. So again, here also you see that there is a whole process. There is a whole. Again, I am focusing on the fact that nothing is happening out of the way and out of the blue. Autogenic succession means after the succession has begun, in most of the cases, it is community itself which, as a result of reactions with the environment, modifies its own environment, thus causing its own replacement by the new communities. This is autogenic. Okay, please do look for examples. Allogenic, replacement of one community by the another, largely due to forces other than the effects of community. That means minus community. That means community is not responsible, but there are other forces. It may occur in highly disturbed or eroded areas or in ponds where nutrients and pollutants enter from outside and modify the environment and in turn communities. So when we speak about water pollution in the in rivers like Yamuna, or when we are speaking about even forest areas which are actually suffering because of extrinsic factors, there we can say so. Autotrophic succession is characterized by early and continued dominance of autotrophic organisms. What are autotrophic organisms? Say green plants. So it begins in a predominantly inorganic environment. The energy flow is maintained indefinitely, and there is a gradual increase in the organic matter content supported by energy flow. Similarly, heterotrophic succession characterized by early dominance of heterotrophic organisms such as bacteria, acetinomycetes, fungi, animals. It begins in a medium which is rich in organic matter such as areas like rivers, streams, and these are heavily polluted with sewage or in small pools receiving leaf litter and household garbage and so on. So that is what is heterotrophic succession. Induced succession is induced, that means overgrazing is there, frequent scrapping is there, shifting cultivation or industrial pollution is there, it is deteriorating the ecosystem, and the agriculture practices are retrogression of a stable state to a young state by man's deliberate action. That is what how we can understand, and we can obviously quote ourselves that even when the places, or even when the areas where human activities are taking place, especially if we speak about agricultural practices, they are in one way retrogression, because before agriculture practices there was a natural vegetation. So that is why what we want to say, that it is a retrogression of a stable state because it is induced by anthropogenic or human activities, because they are human deliberate action. Retrogressive succession, it means return to a simpler or less dense or even impoverished form of community from an advanced or climax community. So this is a very ideal situation when we speak about that there is over industrialization and carrying capacity is being breached. Then you start thinking about that the area will be remaining are not underused, and slowly and surely, not suddenly, slowly and surely the area will be again getting back to the natural state of vegetation, maybe in 1 decade or more than that. In most cases, the causes are allogenic. The forces from outside the ecosystem become severe and demanding. For example, most of our natural forests, they are degrading into shrubs, savanna, and impoverished desert-like stands by severity of grazing animals and by the unplanned urbanization. So removal of wood, leaf, twig, litter also leads to retrogressive succession. That is why we say no human activities are allowed in certain areas. There are reserve forests. There are national parks. whereas in wildlife sanctuaries and also in certain other areas there is only limited human intervention. Cyclic succession, it is a of local occurrence with a large within a large community. Here cyclic refers to repeated occurrence of certain stages of succession. Again it is happening. Whenever there is an open condition created with a large community, it leads to cyclic succession. For example, hydrosphere or hydrarch, where succession occurs in the region where water is in plenty. Ponds, lakes, streams, swamps. Again, it is happening like we see in case of wetlands. We can say. Similarly, mesarch, where there are present adequate moisture conditions. Adequate moisture condition is called mesarch. Then zarach, where there is minimal amount of moisture, for example, desert and rocks. Lithosphere, succession initiating on the rocks, and samosphere, succession initiating on sand, and halosphere, succession on saline water or on soil. So here are the examples like phytoplankton, submerged plant stage, submerged free floating plant stage, and the reed swamp stage, marsh meadow stage. Just look at the pictures very carefully, scrub stage, and finally the forest stage. Again, I am telling you that this is the kind of a succession question may comes in the prelims examination where the UPSC might try to make you, think about your understanding of the whole concepts. If you know it very clearly and the fundamentals and basic are very clear, I'm sure the examples are very easy to create. Now, what is the general process of succession? Nudation, this is the development of a bare area without any life. Exposure of new surface may occur due to several causes like landslide, erosion, deposition, or any catastrophic agency. The causes of nudation are three main types: topographic, due to soil erosion by gravity, water, or wind, the existing community may disappear. Other topographic causes include deposition of sand, landslide, volcanic activity, and the other factors. Very true. Climatic, we can give examples of glacier, dry periods, hail, storm, frost, and may also destroy community. And biotic, man form the most important biotic factor. Already we have discussed that, responsible for destruction of forest, grassland, industry, agriculture, and housing is being there. Other factors are diseases, epidemics due to fungi, viruses which destroy the whole population. That is also possible. Do look for examples when you look to the government websites and also on PIB and other areas. We can find such examples. Invasion is the successful establishment of species in a bare area. UPSC always asks one or two questions. The species actually reaches new sites from another area. Invasion includes migration. Obviously, for the first time it is happening and it is being taking place. The seed, spores, and other propagals of the species reach the bare area. The process is called migration and is generally brought about the air and water. Accesses, that is establishment. After reaching new area, the process of successful establishment of the species as a result of adjustment with the conditions prevailing there is called accesses. That means establishment is taking place, and it is followed by full-scale invasion or full-scale colonization. In plants, after migration, seeds or propagules germinates, seedlings grow, and the adult starts to reproduce. So we have these kind of situation, migration, and after that excesses in many important areas where our forests department and even our wildlife department, they are fighting and they are looking for ways how to prevent invasion of certain weeds and certain poisonous species. Please go for certain examples. Aggregation, colonization by successive offspring and new migrants help increase the population. That we agree. It's a simple definition. And after the stage of cissis, as a result of reproduction, the individuals of the species increase in number. They come close to each other. Very true. Plants and autotrophic organisms which are first to colonize and aggregate, they are called pioneers. And the pioneer are obviously more dynamic. They have low nutrient requirements and they are easily able to stabilize in comparatively to the complex forms. They are small sized and make less demand from the environment. We agree with that. But then when it comes to competition and co-action, because there will be aggregation of large number of individuals of species at the limited space, there will be competition. We already discussed competition in our last lecture when we speak about interspecific or interspecific competition between the species and between different species for space and nutrition. The individuals of a species affect each other's life in various ways, and it is called co-action. When in fact when we study, we are also impacting each other. That is also kind of a co-action. The species which fail to compete, they are ultimately discarded. Same happens with the preparation also. The reproductive capacity, wide ecological amplitude, and so forth are some factors which help the species withstand the competition that we know. Now the reaction, what is reaction? Reaction is a mechanism of the modification of environment through the influence of organisms on it. That means organism is making an impact on the environment. And due to this, very significant stage changes take place in soil, water, light conditions, temperature. Already we are seeing climate change. but that is because of human activities. As a result of reaction, environment is modified, that also we agree, becomes unsuitable for existing community. We say like the kind of birds which should be there in the open green bushes, are they found in the concretes of Gurgaon or Pune or Bengaluru or even Delhi? So when it becomes unsuitable for existing community, which sooner or later is replaced by another community, that is serial community. You can talk about pigeons. The whole sequence of communities that replaces one another in the given area is called series, and the different communities constituting the series are called serial communities, serial stages, or developmental stages. Just term is important, and term is enough for you in the prelims exam. Stabilization is the complex stage, that is the climax stage. There occurs a stage when the final termination of community becomes more or less established for a longer period of time. It can maintain itself in equilibrium with the climate of the area, and the final community is not replaced. It is known as climax community, and the stage is called climax stage. So you see an example here: rooted submerged stage, rooted floating stage, reed swamp stage, marsh meadow, and then you have woodland stage, and finally the forest stage. Phytoplankton and the floating, they are also playing an important role. So what are the general processes of succession? As a good example of succession is the hydrate succession or hydrosphere, which we have discussed, the terms we have discussed just recently, in which a pond and its community are converted into land community. So P2L is happening. In the initial stage, what is happening? Phytoplankton, we know that. Some blue-green algae like cyanobacteria, green algae, for example, Spirogyra or Oidogonium diatoms bacteria, they are the pioneer colonizer. That is why without phytoplanktons, the whole sea wealth will be gone, and they are consumed by zooplanktons. Phytoplanktons are consumed by zooplanktons like protozoans, amoeba, paramecium, iglina, fish such as bluegill fish, sunfish, largemouth, etc. And gradually these organisms die, and they increase the dead organic matter in the pond. Now this is utilized by bacteria and fungi and minerals which are released after the decomposition. Okay. Now the nutrient rich mud which is there because of this situation then support the growth of rooted hydrophytes. The rooty hydrophytes comes into picture after all this process of phytoplankton, zooplankton, and then increasing of the nutrient rich mud, and hydrilla comes, hydrilla or vallisneria or cataphylium, all these things comes into picture in the shallow water zone. Now this submerged stage is also inhabited by animals such as dragonflies, mayflies, or crustaceans such as acilas and so forth. So you see, this is also a whole phenomena taking place, and the hydrophytes, they are also dying. They are decomposed by microorganisms. Again, next stage is coming. They are releasing nutrients, and silting is also taking place. Water depth of the pond is also reduced, and at the margin of pond grows rooted floated vegetation. You must have seen in the Indian villages the plant species whose leaves reach the water surface and the roots they remain in the mud. Plants such as Nulumbo, Nucifera, Trapa, Monocoria, they also grow in these conditions. So in the floating stage, faunal living space is increased and diversified. Hydras, frogs, salamanders, gill-breathing snails, diving beetles, and host of new insects capable of utilizing the undersurface of the floating leaves, they start appearing. So even turtles and snakes also invade the pond. Now gradually the water depth in the pond is again decreasing due to evaporation, and the deposition of organic matter and the concentration of nutrients is also increasing. Free floating plants such as azolla and then pistia and sporodila, they are also coming in number, and because of high nutrient availability all these factors multiplies. Gradually the dead parts fill up the pond ecosystem, resulting in the further buildup of substratum, as we have seen in that graphic representation just now. So you see, this is how it is happening. Bare bottom stage, submerged vegetation stage, immersed temporary pond, and then you have climax one. See, this is the whole scenario which is coming into picture. Do have a look and make your own writing note of this in a very clear cut manner. Succession in xeric habitat. So that happens when you have very little moisture. It begins on exposed parent rocks or lithosphere or dry sand, that is samosere. A lithosphere involves the following stages. First is the crustose lichen stage, that is pioneers, foliose lichen stage, moss stages, herb stage, shrub stage, and finally forest stage, that is the climax stage. So all these are stages. You just look for the sequence. The pioneer plants are the lichens, mosses, and salagrina, which helps in soil formation by accelerating erosion. In course of time, grasses, annuals, herbaceous vegetation, they grow on the soils deposited on rocks. And like hydrocera, lithocera also involves successive changes like we have discussed in the previous one. Pioneer animals will be there in the lichen stages. Few species of mites, ants, and spiders will be there. They are exposed to harsh environment like extreme fluctuation in temperature, and During the moss stage, many new species like mite, small spiders, and springtail, they will invade the community. Then herb stage will come, nematodes, mite, and columbola, ants, and all these will come. Then after this, shrub and forest stage, they will be coming. Qualitative and qualitative modification is occurring in the flora and in fauna. Thus, there occurs numerous kinds of animals such as slugs, snails, wireworms, millipedes, centipedes, mites, ants, slowbug. You have to see from the examination perspective that what must not be there. Okay, from the very small, I have already tried to bring here reptiles, turtles, lizards, snakes, birds, flycatchers, grouse, mammals such as mole, mouse, shrews, squirrels, chipmunk, and fox. So just try to see that what is not possible, and then your whole concept will be very much clear. So let's have a look at the Xerox section in the graphical form. That's what we discussed. Exposed rock, lichens, mosses, grass and weeds, mixed herbaceous, shrubs, young forest, tulip popular, mature forest, that is hook and ecori, and then climax forest, that is sugar maple. This is all for the succession, and do look for certain examples which I have not put up so that our speed is not getting down. I am trying to focus on the fundamentals so that your all ideas are very much clear, and do link with the previous 6 lectures so that whole notes you are reading in one go, and then we will be discussing in our one-to-one sessions and in our mentorship sessions what more we can do and how we can make sure to get the best of the information and create our notes correctly and efficiently. See you in the next lecture. Thank you very much for being with UPSC with Ansarkari.